Okay, we're off. Thank you. Okay, thanks for coming in. I did think that after lunch this afternoon I would be here on my own, so I appreciate you coming in. I know it's a bit of an effort at this stage of a conference. And I would like to also thank all of you, because when I walked in to this hotel at 11 o'clock yesterday morning, I felt very, very intimidated, because usually I'm at more international conferences, and I walked into a room where everyone was speaking Polish, and I was like, oh, who do I talk to? And you've been very, very welcoming, so thanks very much. I've really enjoyed it, so thank you. Okay, so learning culture. I'm on the right slide. Let's get going. I have to speak quietly, okay. Learning culture. Adapt or die. Nice title. It's not mine. I can't take credit for it. It's very dramatic. Yeah? But really, am I not just like being over dramatic? Is it really like that? Learn, adapt, die. Well, let me tell you a story, and it's a true story. Just over 10 years ago, I was a senior test manager, I would call myself, and I met another senior test manager, and we had a cup of coffee, which turned into a glass of wine, and then turned into another glass of wine. And we realized we had a common dream. We had a dream to change the testing world. Now, we didn't really know how we were going to go about that, but we said, okay, the first step is to found a company. So 10 years ago, we founded a company called Tessina. It's based in Prague, in the Czech Republic. I'm British. The other co-owner is Slovak. We have a Czech company. So just imagine what that looks like. And because we've been doing testing a long time, we thought we knew a lot about testing. But what do we know about running a business, building a business? Well, not really much. But soon, there were more of us. In fact, we experienced something they call hockey stick growth. There were 10 of us, there were 20 of us, there were 40 of us, there were 80 of us, and suddenly there were over 100 of us. And we were so successful, we were growing really, really fast. In fact, we took the graph, how we were growing, and we said, in 5 years' time, we'll be the biggest software testing company in the world. And then we got a punch in the hubris. Now, if you don't know where the hubris is, it's a part of the human body around about here. And if somebody punches you there, it really hurts. Okay, the joke landed, so that's good. So, Bill Gates said, success is a lousy teacher. It seduces smart people into thinking they can't lose. Phil Royston, that's me, says, success seduces normal people, which is what we are, into thinking they're really smart. Václav Havel said, and I hope you know who he is, he said, follow the man who seeks the truth. Run from the man who's already found it. Because people who think they are smart do really dumb shit. And that's me talking again, it's not Václav, he wouldn't have said anything like that. And we really got into quite some difficulties. We've gone from really being very, very successful to suddenly it looked terrible. The first problem was we didn't really know how to run a business, so we had to learn how to do that. But the second problem we had, and maybe the biggest problem, the problem we're still actually dealing with, is our software testers. Now, we'd grown on the idea that with a good introduction to software training, a person with no previous software testing experience but has the right sort of mentality, good soft skills and so forth, that we can produce a pretty good software tester. And this was a software tester who was mostly what they call these days a manual software tester, and we can have a discussion on the break why I don't like the expression manual software tester. And our clients were mostly doing waterfall projects. So for our clients, this was a perfect product. These people were smart. They knew a lot about software testing. We not only give them some initial education, but we help them develop. But around about 2017, 2018, almost at once, all our clients decided to jump on the digital bandwagon. So we're talking banks, automotive, healthcare. And digitalization means, for IT, it means agile transformation. Now, if you've been part of an agile transformation in a bigger company, you maybe know what that looks like. So they start looking at the roles in something like a Scrum team. And they say, okay, we've got a Scrum Master. Scrum Master, Scrum Master. Master, Master, Master. Project Manager. That's a Project Manager. So we put the Project Manager in that role. And then they go, Product Owner, Product Owner. Somebody from business? No. We don't get on very well with people from business, so we'll put the guy there that always talked to business for us. That's a business analyst. Developers, fine, we can hire some of those. And then they looked at the last role. And this was QA. And instead of seeing QA as a software tester, they saw Batman. And you know Batman. He's got the hat, he's got the cloak, he's got this belt with all these tools on it, he's got the bat car, the bat boat, the bat bike, the bat I don't know what, bat aeroplane, he's got a great butler, and he's got a cave, yeah? And he's got all this technology, he's got all these skills, he can fly, he can beat anybody up, yeah? And they wanted Batman, because if this agile transformation went wrong, they needed somebody to save Gotham City. Our guys weren't Batmen or Batwomen. And the demand for our product, our people, fell dramatically. They were looking for different skill sets than we had. And it was really a wake-up call. It was really adapt, or what it felt like at the time, it felt like adapt or die. Now, let me ask you a question. Why are you here? The other presentations weren't so good, maybe would be one. Okay. You don't know. Okay, let me tell you why you're here. Testing used to look like that. You had some test strategy, test planning, you had some test design, test analysis, you had test execution, and you had some sort of reporting. You maybe just reported defects, you may have had some testing status reports, you may have done some risk analysis if you're pretty smart. These days, testing looks like this. Yeah? You're on a conference, it's 3 days long. It's got how many tracks? 4? 5? And the range of topics being presented here is like this. This wasn't like that before. And for us testers, now knowledge is like air. We really feel we've got to learn all these new things. And it's not the same things today. Tomorrow somebody will come up with something new. And you have to learn that. AI machine learning is a big thing now. We're struggling to breathe. Why am I here? Well, you don't know the answer to that one, so I'll tell you. Now, being up here is not really my idea. I do enjoy it, but I don't really have time to think up things to do on conference presentations. But what usually happens is there's an event, and somebody says, somebody from Tessiner should make a presentation. So a little team goes away and discusses who will make the presentation and what it will be about. And a few days later, they come back and say, Phil, we've made a decision. You'll make the presentation. And at first of all, I'm like, oh, they chose me. You know, I'm like full of appreciation. And I think like, okay, I'll come to the conference. A lot of people will be in the room. They'll actually be paying attention, which we are. Thank you very much. Yeah. And I'll feel quite excited about it. And then fight or flight will stick in. Yeah. And get frightened at that point. I'm a bit of emotion. I'm thinking maybe it won't be so good. Maybe I'll be here on my own. Maybe no one will ask me any questions. And I do the normal thing when you're in a fight or flight situation. You either try to run away or you argue against it. So what I say is like, I have no idea what I will present about. And they were ready. They said, Phil, present about learning culture. And at this point, my emotional brain switches into a rational state. And I said, oh yeah, learning culture, that's interesting. Because they know that's something I'm having trouble with. I've got a team that has good skills. And suddenly I need them to have different skills. And I was struggling. I gave them everything I thought I could give them. They've got 10 days of training a year. They get a generous financial training budget. We are an ISTQB trainer, but we develop a lot of training courses ourselves. We had boot camps, technical boot camps, how to do Git, version control, basic scripting. We were trying to give them the building blocks to learn these technical skills. And when we looked at how many training days they were taking, how much money they were spending, it was almost zero. And I needed this to happen fast. And I was very, very frustrated. And I said, where's the motivation? Why don't they learn these new things? It's clear to me that they need to learn new things. And they weren't learning new things. So what I've learned from doing a few conference presentations is it gives me an opportunity to learn something. I've got a problem. And if I want to stand up here and make a presentation about this problem, I want it to be good. I want it to be a little bit of fun, but I want it like be informative. So I try and find out as much about it as possible. And Richard Back, I always say James Back on this slide, which is a sort of testing Freudian slip. We teach best what we most need to learn. So preparing this presentation taught me a lot of things about learning. So then I had the problem where to start. And when I started looking at learning, I thought software testing was complicated, but learning is next level. There's such a wide scope, there's lots of different opinions, and everybody's arguing with everybody else. And I couldn't really find a start point, a way into the presentation, until I came across this quote. And it's by Edward Hall. He's apparently famous. He's an anthropologist, which means he studies human beings. And he said, the drive to learn is as strong as a sexual drive. And I said, hang on. Now, my team is quite young, and they got into the baby producing phase a few years ago. So based on the number of babies visiting the Testament offices, I could see they had absolutely no problem with the sexual drive at all. Where was the drive to learn? So this was my way in. I wanted to try and answer this question. What drives us to learn? Now, before I get to that, and I will try and explain it, I want to ask a first question. What's the expected outcome of learning? Okay, it is after lunch on a Friday, so I'll carry on my own. Do you remember this moment in your life? The day you learned how to ride a bike. Yeah? For me, it's the first vivid childhood memory I have. It was 1969. Neil Armstrong had taken the first steps on the moon. The Beatles played their last live concert on the rooftops of Abbey Road Studios in London. And Phil Royston, a small child in the north of England, learned how to ride a bike. It was a great year for mankind. These jokes are working today, it's good. Okay, so what happened was my dad took me and my bike out into the middle of the road. Now, it's 1969. It was quite normal for children to learn how to ride a bike in the middle of the road. And he sat me on the bike, he grabbed hold of the back of the seat, and he said to me, Phil, don't look down and keep pedaling. And he started to push me forwards. And after a few seconds, he said, Phil, don't look down, keep pedaling. Because, of course, I wasn't pedaling and I was looking down. So I started to pedal, and I was looking up. And then a few seconds later, I heard, Phil, don't look down and keep pedaling. And I realized my dad wasn't holding onto the bike anymore. I was going on my own. And I can remember to this day the sensation, the speed. Yeah, it was like the world flashing past my eyes. I felt the wind in my hair. But the biggest sensation was freedom. Yeah, as a small child, suddenly you've got access to something you hadn't got before. Now, I rode my bike for the first time. Does that mean, can I ride my bike to school? Now, even in 1969, parents weren't quite so irresponsible. They allowed you to ride your bike to school if you'd only ridden it the first time. We had something called a cycle proficiency course. You had to go to school with your bike, and on the playground they had all these cones and lines, and you had to cycle around the playground and prove that you weren't going to get yourself killed the first time you went out on the road. And if you passed the test, then you could maybe ride your bike to school. Now, I can ride my bike to school. Does it mean I can enter a professional cycling race? If you've watched this on TV, I like cycling. And sometimes I watch the professional cycle on TV. Those guys are amazing. They go down the mountains faster than the guys on the motorbikes who are supposed to be filming them. They can't keep up. That's why you don't see the descents on the TV. They are so fit, which means training, nutrition, recovery. It's a science these days, sports science. Yeah? And the tactics in the big races, it's a team sport, and it's very, very tactical. This is why they're wearing the radios. They're communicating with each other. So I can ride my bike to school. No way could I enter a professional bicycle race. So what's the expected outcome of learning? It's to, and I have to read the slide, develop the capacity to reliably produce a certain quality of results. I can ride my bike, I can ride my bike to school, I can enter a race. And when I've learned that new thing, I'm somebody new. When I rode my bike for the first time, I was Phil 2.0. And I can do something that Phil 1.0 couldn't do. Literally, learning changes us. Now, you thought this was a testing conference. It's actually a conference about economics. So what's the expected benefit of learning for organizations? Just so you know. So Marxist theory says that you have a workforce. And the workforce has some human capital. That's some sort of knowledge, skills, experience and social qualities that enables them to do some sort of valuable work, work that people will pay for. Either you produce a product and somebody buys it, or you have a service and somebody will pay for your services. So therefore you have some revenues, and if you're not totally stupid, you can produce some profits. And if you apply learning to your human capital, improving the knowledge, experience and skills of your team, then they can either produce more valuable work, generating more profits, revenues, or they can do the same work more efficiently or effectively, which means more profits. And this is why the global learning and development industry is worth $320 billion, and I think that's an old number. And I'll explain why it's an old number, because learning got even more vital. In 1989, the US Army started to describe the world as VUCA. That means volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. The Cold War had ended. Yeah? From a Western point of view, the stability that the Cold War gave was gone. And it looked like Europe was falling apart. We had Yugoslavia and other countries which were basically going into a civil war. But that was 1989. These days, they describe the world as BANI. That means brittle, anxious, non-linear, incomprehensible. It's not unstable, it's chaotic. Imagine any major event for the past 5 years, including the current one in the Middle East, that somebody predicted. Nobody knows what's going to happen next. Anyone that tells you that I know what's going to happen in the stock market next week is lying. They don't know. I'm a businessman. We used to do 5-year plans. You can't predict tomorrow, really. I sort of gave up doing those sorts of plannings. So, organizations cannot predict the future. You can't get ready for the future. All you can do is adapt when the world changes. And if you don't adapt, you could go out of business. Certainly will affect your success. And the organizations cannot change unless you learn something new. Yeah? Because you're the human capital. So professional growth is not just increasing profits, it's actually enabling companies to survive. This is based on a book from the 90s. It's called The Fifth Discipline. So it's quite old, so it's not a new thing. But that's basically what the situation is. Now, how do we learn? Let me ask you a question. What's the best way of learning, experience, or a degree? No opinion? Damn! You've ruined my presentation. Now, this question is very often on LinkedIn. Unfortunately, I have to use LinkedIn. I'm a CEO. And it's usually accompanied by this video clip of 2 guys playing ping pong. One guy is labeled experience and the other guy is labeled degree. And the clip shows the guy with the experience beating the guy, completely beating the guy with a degree. Now, there's a lot of things even wrong with the video clip. It isn't what it seems to be. So I want to quickly move on and ask the question in a different way. You wake up in hospital. You're lying on the operating table. Bunch of faces above you with a mask on. It happened to me once. And they say, Phil, we need to perform an operation on you. We've got one doctor who's got a degree, a surgeon who's got a degree, and we've got another one who hasn't got a degree, but he's got a lot of experience. Which surgeon would you like to perform the operation on you today? Well, I'm going with the guy with a degree. But it's stupid, as a gentleman there said, because to qualify as a doctor, you need both degree and the experience. You go to university for 6 years, theoretical study, and you practice at least for 6 years until you can qualify to be a doctor. So it's a combination of understanding and practice is a way to learn. But it's not quite as simple as that. We have these learning models. Again, if you want to improve your social index on LinkedIn, post one of these, you'll get lots of comments, and you'll be famous. But there won't be nice comments. Now, the learning pyramid is the official model of the National Training Laboratories in America. And it looks nice, yeah? If I read it, the retention rates for students, yeah? So if you walk out of a lecture, you remember almost nothing. And then you go gradually up, reading, demonstration, discussion, practice, doing blah, blah, blah. And there's percentages there, yeah? When we see percentages, we think it's based on some sort of empirical study. Now, the problem with that is that nobody ever found the research. Nobody knows what questions they asked, who was asked, and how they calculated the results. Now, the next model you'll see there often is 70-20-10 model. Again, percentages. Yeah? So we think this is based on some hard analysis. 70% comes from challenging assignments, on the job experience, 20% from development relationships, feedback, and 10% from coursework and training. Now, that sort of ratio sits with me based on my experience. But I have a problem with this because of the percentages. Because this survey is based on this model is based on a survey of 200 CEOs. 200. I'm a CEO. Every day I'm faking it till I make it. This is CEO opinion. Yeah? So let's move quickly on. Now, the model I want to explain to you, describe to you now, is based on a book called Mindset. It's a book by Carol C. Dweck. And did anyone read this book? Does anybody want to change their lives? Download it and read it on the way home today. I went from Phil 2.1 to 2.7 after reading this book. It really is a very good book. And in this model, this learning cycle, it starts with you want to start doing something. Yeah? So when you want to start doing something, hopefully, occasionally I've not done this, you try and find something out about it. Yeah? And you might go to a training course, you might read a book. I watch YouTube videos, or you might just ask one to show you how to do it. Well, these are all valid ways of somebody finding out something about it. And then you start to practice. And for me, this is the moment where the magic of the human brain happens. I'm a very, very, like say, in awe of the subconscious. Practice is where you have some conscious idea and you turn it into an unconscious activity. This is where your habits and behavior comes from. Remember learning how to drive a car. The instructor said, change gear. Yeah? He said, take your foot off the gas, put the clutch down, and go with the gear stick. Yeah? And the first time you did it, it was like horrible. Yeah? And it took you a long time. And if you drive now, do you actually think about changing gear? Not at all. Because your subconscious is doing it for you. In fact, when I used to drive, I don't drive too much now. When I used to drive, I used to get to work and not remember having driven to work. Basically, I was on automatic the whole way. Now, the next part of this is the important part, according to Carol. And that's when you make a mistake or something goes wrong, there's a failure or some adversity. Now, Carol has two mindsets. She has what I call an open mindset and a closed mindset. I think she used growth and closed mindset, but I use open and closed. And a closed mindset person has a problem at this point because we humans, all we humans, go through life thinking we're pretty perfect. And when we get some feedback of some sort that we're not perfect, it's actually very emotionally painful for us. When we make a mistake, it hurts emotionally. Yeah? And the closed mindset person cannot deal with the emotional pain. They walk away from that problem. Yeah? I'm not doing that, it's stupid. Or they'll blame somebody else. My boss told me to do that. I knew it wasn't a good idea. Yeah? And they just can't deal with the emotional pain. The open mindset person switches into something called reflection. And this again, where I talked about you're in an emotional state and you need to switch to a rational state. And they reflect. First thing they do is try and forgive themselves for making the mistakes. I'm human. Of course I make mistakes. And then they try and figure out what happened. Why did it happen? What did I do wrong? And they go through this period of reflection, and then they'll start going around this circle again. They'll find out something new. They'll do a little bit of learning. At this point, probably a good idea to go and talk to somebody who's done this before. Because you probably won't find a training course or something online that's going to help you. ChatGPT, for example, might not help you. And you keep going round and round this circle. By going round and round this circle, lots of times you achieve something called mastery. You get really good at something. So it's a combination of things. And how do you get somebody to go around that circle? Well, you can't. I can't force any of you to go around that circle. It has to come from inside. Intrinsic motivation. There's no way you can force somebody to go through all that pain and all that work. Now, just a quick pointer, if you're hiring anybody in your company and you want to know if it's somebody who's just got experience or is truly an expert, so a guy comes to the interview, he's got 5 years experience, yeah? And he might tell you that he's done this and he's done this and done this and he's been on these training courses. Does that make him an expert? No, because you ask him the question, what mistakes did you make? What did you learn from those mistakes? How did you react to the mistakes? If the guy says he didn't make any mistakes, well, he's probably a guy with just 5 years of experience. He's not an expert. And where does this intrinsic motivation come from? I'm back to the fifth discipline because they have a good way of explaining it. Intrinsic motivation, they call it a creative tension. Yeah? You've got a rubber band. Yeah? Imagine I've got a rubber band in my hand, and the tension in that rubber band will make my hands come together. Yeah? And it's a creative tension because you're creating the new you. Yeah? So it's creating something new. To have the creative tension, you have to know where you are today, you have to understand where you are today, and you have to know where you want to go. You need these two things. And with that tension, you can hopefully make your way towards your goal. What happens with the mindset is, the closed mindset guy can't deal with the emotion, so he looks at the goal when he makes a mistake and says, stupid, and he'll reduce the goal. This is too much for me, I'll never do that, reduces the goal. Eventually he ends up where he started. The open mindset person will do one of two things. He'll say, okay, I now understand I've made that mistake, that I'm not as good as I thought he was. I'm actually down here somewhere. Or you might actually say, well, really I've started to realize that these goals are not the right ones for me, and they'll make an adjustment, but they'll keep this creative tension. So dealing with failure and setbacks is very, very important in learning. There was a discussion on the panel this morning about learning, like going on training courses. Oh no, I've just explained the learning cycle. It's only part of the equation. And there's two very, very important things here. For me, personally, I hate getting feedback. I really hate it. If somebody comes running up to me and says, Phil, I need to tell you something about what you said in that last meeting. And I'll do one of two things. Oh, I don't have time, sorry, I've got to go to a meeting. Or I'll sit there and I'll fight, saying, no, you didn't understand what I said. No, that's not what I meant, and so forth. Yeah? And I hate getting the feedback. And this, again, is because I hate getting some information that I'm not quite as perfect as I thought I was. Now, receiving feedback is extremely uncomfortable. Yeah? I know that getting feedback is extremely uncomfortable. If I want to give somebody feedback, that makes me feel very uncomfortable, so I don't. Because I want to be kind. I want to be nice, rather. Yeah? But being nice is not being kind. If I don't know I've made a mistake, what could help me? Telling me I've made a mistake. That's being kind. And the second thing is reflection. In this day and age, I notice that everybody's staring into their phones almost the whole time. Yeah? You're always online. We've become slaves to the algorithms. I'm the same. We're all after the dopamine hit. We don't take time for reflection. And to reflect, you just need to switch off. You need to stare out the window. You need to look into space. And in that quiet, your subconscious and your conscious brain can start talking to each other. My theory, anyway. So if you've got a deadline, and you've got 2,000 test cases to run until Friday, and one tester is looking out the window, leave him alone. He might actually be thinking of a better way to test the system than those 2,000 test cases. So why, if it's so hard and painful, what drives us to do it? Now, you will know the answer to the next question. The answer to this question is the answer to the ultimate question. What's the meaning of life? Anybody? 42, exactly. Or, if you're a fan of Monty Python, it's basically to be nice to somebody and try and live in harmony and eat healthily. Now we laugh, because we know that the answer to the meaning of life is the ultimate question, and until the planet Earth produces the answer in several million years' time, for the fans of The Hitchhikers, we know what I'm talking about, we don't know the answer. But we can answer one other question. What's the meaning of my life? And basically, it's to seek happiness and a sense of purpose. Now, when we talk about happiness, we can use Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I usually score points for getting Maslow's pyramid in a presentation, so here it is. It was described in a paper in 1943, so it's super old. There's a lot of critics of it. There's a lot of alternative models of motivation. But I think it still kind of works. Yeah? So at the bottom, you've got your basic physiological needs. So you're on the poverty line. You have to walk 2 kilometers to get water. You've got 1 bucket. And you have to bring 3 buckets of water a day. So imagine what happens if you get 2 buckets. Yeah? You'll be so happy about the bucket. Yeah? So these are the basic resources in your life. You've got air, water, food, shelter. Yeah? You can have sex, apparently. And the next level is safety. Yeah? So I'm a little bit above the poverty line. I've got a job. I've got access to healthcare. I've got access to education. And then once you've got that, then you can start thinking about the things that can make you happy. Relationships. We're a social species. Relationships are very, very important for us. Esteem. What I think about myself, what other people think about me is very important for us. And the last one is self-actualization, which I didn't understand. So there's something a little bit missing here. So here's another model about happiness. In the 1950s, there was a movement called positive psychology. Now, up to that point, psychology had only been concerned with what makes us miserable. In the 1950s, these guys came along and said, what makes us happy? And they came up with a happiness formula. And they said happiness is based on your genes to some extent, yeah? Every one of us can only be so miserable and so happy. You can't get more miserable than this genetic range. And everybody's got a different range. Some people, unfortunately, are less happy, and some people, irritatingly, are more happy. So that's fixed. But on top of that, you've got the conditions of your life. This is what Maslow was talking about, yeah? Where you live, what your job is, if you're married, and so forth. So these are things that change, but not so often. Yeah, but they can affect your happiness. Some things can't change. How tall you are, the colour of your skin, for example. Those things are fixed, but conditions of your life. And then on top of this, you've got these voluntary actions. What's that? That's stuff I want to do. And if I do something that gives me a sense of flow, and you might have heard this in a sporting context, this is being in the zone. Sportsmen, when they win a match, say, I was in the zone. And you can be like that in work. You've got a task. It's challenging, it's not easy. If it was easy, it'd be boring. It's challenging you. But it's aligned with your skills and experience. This is something you feel you can do, but it's challenging you. And you're getting feedback as you go along. You try something, it doesn't work, you're learning something. You try something else, you move forward, you get feedback, yeah, that works, let me try something else. And you've all maybe hopefully felt this at 5 o'clock. Somebody's tapping you on the shoulder in work saying, hey, we're going for a beer. And you go, oh, 5 o'clock already. You completely lost yourself during the day when you do those sorts of things. And this purpose, what is purpose? Yeah? And the thing to realize is purpose is not a cause. Yeah? It's not feeding the hungry. It's not ending war. It's not saving the planet. All those things are very good, but it doesn't need to be that big a thing. And a purpose is basically, it's something bigger than just you. It's something beyond just what you can do. It's something you have to do with others. And when you do it with others, then you build relationships. And it's something that challenges you to grow. Again, it can't be easy. And this is where purpose comes from. And why? Well, this is how we're built as human beings. Now, if you've been to the lunch queue at lunchtime, you waited maybe 20 to 30 minutes for lunch. The Darwin theory of evolution said survival of the fittest. So in that case, we should have all been fighting to get to the front of the queue, but we didn't. Because something happened to us, I can't remember, 20,000, 100,000 years ago, and it was a cultural change. Because on top of that genetic evolution, we've also got a cultural evolution. And something switched in our brains. And for the first time, we were able to work together in groups because we realized in groups, in little tribes, we can do a hell of a lot more than we can do on our own. Build pyramids, for example. So, and we form these groups, and these groups have a task, yeah? Yeah, they have a goal, a collective goal. Something that contributes to the greater good of the group. And this reinforces our feelings. We're a hypersocial species. We're like bees and ants. We need relationships. I'm a total introvert, but I need relationships. Yeah? We all need relationships. Relationships make us feel happy. And you get this connection with people and the things beyond yourself. And this is where our purpose comes from. It's just based on the way we're built. So what's the expected outcome of learning? So it enables us to change ourselves and our relationship with the world around us. It helps us fulfill our needs. It can help us find and fulfill our purpose. and basically can make us happy. So that's why Edward Hall said, I believe, that the drive to learn is as strong as a sexual drive. Now, I don't want to depress you on a Friday. The weekend's coming. But unfortunately, I have to tell you, we talk about work-life balance these days, yeah? Like, we can compensate for work with life. I'm sorry, it's not going to work like that. You can't escape work. All of us have to work. It's a horrible fact for me, and it's probably a horrible fact for you too. We go there 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. It takes up an awful lot of our time. And if work is horrible, life is horrible. There's no real way you can compensate for it. So you should try and find work which helps you be happy and find a sense of purpose. And when I left school at 16, I come from a very poor industrial town in the north of England. And they said to me, Phil, you can either go to the steelworks or to the coal mines. And that's a job. And you know what a job is. It's menial, repetitive, supervised work. It's Taylorism. Taylor broke down a manufacturing process, a complicated manufacturing process, into small pieces, the production line. And people with no skills and no experience could do this one little thing and hand it over to the next person who did the next little thing. And that can help you with your basic needs. You've got food and money, you've got access to healthcare. So, okay, that covers me at least the bottom there. And for baby boomers like myself, when I left, I didn't want to go to the steelworks or the coal mines, so I went to university instead. And when I left university, I said, Phil, you should get a career. And you want to become, a manager, a space scientist, a chemist, or whatever, yeah? And you set yourself a goal. Again, we're at this creative tension. You've got a goal, you leave university, nothing, and in 10 years' time, I want to be a rocket scientist. And so it's creative tension, but we found out that's a bit of a rat race, yeah? Because when I become an IT director, all my peers become IT directors as well. So I'm not got any better feeling of esteem. It's gone. I buy a new car, fancy new car on the drive. My neighbor buys a new car. My sense of esteem is gone. So it's not something that really lasts. If I can find a work which enables me to feel a sense of purpose, and I can occasionally do something that gives me flow, then I've got the whole pyramid covered. And that means I can go home happy, be nice to my wife, be nice to my kids, be nice to my neighbors, because I go home in a good mood. So, that's my recommendation. Try and find an environment where that happens. What did I learn? Well, the first thing I learned, as I mentioned, I was trying to force people into learning. People don't resist change. They resist being changed. When somebody comes along to you and says, do this, do this, do this, you fight against it. It's like it's one of our basic human instincts again. And if you're going to help them, if you're going to have internal motivation, this intrinsic motivation, then all you can really do is help them understand where they are and where they want to go. You can't tell them. Feedback, it's not nice, but it is kind. Allow people time for reflection. If you're not getting in work some time to reflect, to work on things, to play with things, play with new ideas, then you'll be struggling. And again, because we're a tribal species, we work together in groups. Groups have collective goals and values, and it's good to find those in the team, but not again to tell them what the goals and values are, which some big organizations still do. Talk to the team. Try and find out what their goals and values are. And they're the common goals and values for the whole team. And finally, let people do stuff they enjoy. At least from time to time. There's always some horrible job that nobody wants to do and somebody has to do it. But allow them to do the stuff they really enjoy doing. Now, books to read. I've already mentioned Carol. I've already mentioned The Fifth Discipline. If you want to know more about motivation, I recommend Daniel H. Pink's book, Drive. It's very, very good. Again, quite shocked me how well he was able to describe things. And the best book of all time is The Happiness Hypothesis. And it's the only book I've ever read where I got to the end, went immediately back to the beginning and read it again. It is that good. And that's about positive psychology. So I'm done. Remy is here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so any questions to Phil? And applause.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any questions to Phil? No? You have actually covered everything.
No, definitely not. Yes.
So thank you for an interesting presentation. So what would you do if someone come to you and he said, okay, I want to learn this or this, but you feel that what this person wants to achieve is not feasible, so you think, okay, he will not succeed. Would you tell your opinion, or will you just let the person try to achieve what he has in mind, and then to reflect maybe the person that, yeah, I didn't succeed? Or what would you do in that situation?
If you support the conversation of trying to work out where you are and where you're going, and maybe I missed something here, there's something called a development conversation, where you can try and work with somebody to look where they're coming from and what things were good and what things were bad, so they start to understand themselves a bit better. So you can maybe get a direction and maybe a speed of that person's potential. And again, you shouldn't okay, you have to give maybe feedback in some way, but you can't, the person has to understand it, themselves. It's very, very difficult. This is it's not management, it's not leadership, it's coaching, it's mentoring, yeah? And it's quite a very difficult skill. Yeah? This is something where in my organization, we've gone a long way already, but we still haven't got this ability to work with people on their intrinsic motivation, and that's my next step. Yeah? So at some points, people have to learn from themselves, like children. Yeah? You've got children, yeah, they occasionally do things and you say, don't do that, and then sometimes you say, oh, let them, and they'll learn. Yeah, so.
Any more questions?
Right at the back, Remy. Over there, that's closer.
Okay.
I would like to ask about the cost of making mistakes. What if in the learning process the cost of mistake is actually a job? If I can lose the job because I make such a huge mistake.
So I'm not quite sure I understood. The mistake is doing agile, or?
Sorry. The thing is, what if mistake is that big that it may cost the job? Me a job.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Okay, yeah. So here's the deal. What if my client's data will flow through the internet because of my mistake, and this will make very, very bad things?
It's a good question, yeah, I don't know. We've had situations where, let's say, some Excel from a client got into GitHub in a public repository. It didn't have any sensitive data in it at all, but the client found it and found it was their Excel and complained. The person who did it is a person I trust and believe in. So at that point, it's feedback. This happened, why did it happen? Yeah? And try and find a way that it doesn't repeat itself. Yeah, I always said that we're human and we make mistakes. Repeating the mistakes is a stupid thing. Yeah, if people are not learning from the mistakes, then that would be for me a problem. So if somebody was serially making similar mistakes, then me, as a slightly psychopathic, because we have to be CEO, I would discuss with that person that they're better off finding a job somewhere else. Yeah.
So it's actually a good thing if I made mistake and lose my job because of it, so I can find another one and make sure I won't make that mistake again.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah. But it's up to you to reflect, yeah, and ask for feedback, yeah, because maybe you don't know, because we've been in situations where the person didn't know they made a mistake. Nobody told them, and we were angry with the person because they made a mistake, but we didn't actually talk to them about it, yeah? And then they're kind of surprised that everybody's angry with them. So I say again, the feedback thing, we don't want to say something horrible, but how is a guy going to know and understand the situation unless he's got the feedback, yeah?
Yeah, that's a hard truth, but it is what it is. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you. Thank you very much.